All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most incredible, high-stakes intellectual battles in all of history, the showdown between Martin Luther and Erasmus over the freedom of the human will.
It really all comes back to a question we all wrestle with, right? Are we truly the captains of our own ship, making our own choices, or are we kind of being swept along by currents much bigger than us? Well, that exact question was the explosive center of a conflict that literally shook the foundations of Europe 500 years ago.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Imagine it's 1524. The Protestant Reformation is blazing across the continent, and right in the middle of this religious hurricane, you have these two absolute giants of the intellect. So in one corner, you've got Desiderius Erasmus. They called him the Prince of Humanists. He's the most famous intellectual in all of Europe. A guy who cherishes peace, careful reform, and, not rocking the boat too much. And in the other corner, Martin Luther, the defiant monk who kicked this whole thing off. Luther is all fire and passion. For him, the truth, God's truth, had to be shouted from the rooftops no matter who it upset. Two titans with completely opposite game plan.
So, you've got popes and kings leaning on Erasmus, begging him to shut Luther down. He finally steps into the ring with a book called The Diatribe Concerning Free Will, but he does it very, very cautiously.
And here is the absolute key to Erasmus's whole argument, this idea of cooperation. He's saying that, yes, we need God's grace, but humans have this power inside them to work with that grace, to apply themselves to being saved. Our will is an active partner in the whole process. We have to actually choose to take the help that's offered. And this quote, it tells you everything you need to know about Erasmus the man. I am not pleased with assertions. He hated being dogmatic. He truly believed that making these bold, absolute claims about really complicated theology was just plain dangerous. For Erasmus, this whole fight over free will was the perfect example of something that should just be left alone. Why? Because it's super complex, he argued. You don't need to have it all figured out to be a good Christian, and most importantly, fighting about it would just cause riots and chaos and tear the church apart. For him, unity was way more important than winning some theological debate. So Luther gets his hands on Erasmus's book and, well, to say he was unimpressed is an understatement. A year later, he unleashes this absolute cannon blast of a reply on the bondage of the will. He actually considered it one of his most important books ever. And boom, right there, you see the massive gulf between them. Where Erasmus sees danger in making assertions, Luther sees the entire foundation of faith. For Luther, Christianity is nothing but assertions. Being a Christian means you have to stand firm on what God says is true, and you can't have any doubt about it. Luther just flat out rejected this idea that the Bible was too murky on this subject. He's like, look, maybe some verses are hard to translate, but the main message, the stuff about salvation, it's not hidden. It's a giant, brilliant light, brighter than the sun for everyone to see. And right here, this is the heart of the fight. Erasmus says free will is a power we have, something that can choose good and work with God. Luther says no way. He argues the human will is in bondage. It's a slave to sin. It is completely incapable of choosing anything good or even turning toward God. It can only be set free by God's grace alone, not because we helped. Okay, so to really prove his point, Luther brings out what he thinks is the ultimate knockout argument. He calls it his thunderbolt. Luther's thunderbolt is this devastatingly simple chain of logic. Okay, follow me here. Step 1. God knows everything that will ever happen. Perfectly. No mistakes. Step 2. So if God sees that something is going to happen, it has to happen that way. It can't happen any other way because then God's knowledge would be wrong, which is impossible. So the conclusion, he says, is unavoidable. What we call free will is just an illusion. Everything we do is locked in by absolute necessity. I mean, listen to that imagery. With that one powerful metaphor, Luther basically declares the debate is over. If God's foreknowledge is absolute, then this whole idea of a human will that's free to choose, well, in his words, it's ground to powder. It's obliterated. It can't exist. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't just two guys arguing in a library. This debate carved a deep, permanent split
that created two very different ways of being a Christian.
And you can see these two paths so clearly here. For Erasmus, it's a partnership. A merciful God offers help, and we use our free will to accept it. But for Luther, the path is totally different. Salvation is a pure gift. It's given by an all-powerful God to a helpless human who can't do anything to earn it because their will is chained up. You receive it by faith, and that's it. So in the end, this clash of titans really laid bare a fork in the road. One path was all about human dignity, reason, and working with God. The other was about human powerlessness, God's total control, and our complete reliance on grace. And these two worldviews would shape everything that came next, from Catholicism to the Protestant Reformation. And so, here we are, left with the exact same massive question that fueled this debate 500 years ago. It's a puzzle of faith, of philosophy, of our own lives that we're still trying to solve today. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.